This broadcast of the Competizione Performance League GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series is brought to you by Malwar Transport and Assure Action Transport Expert. For oversized cargo and trucking logistics specialists of Quebec, visit www.malwar-transport.ca. And for an expert and professional trucking insurance firm specializing in property and casualty insurance solutions for freight across Quebec, Canada and the United States, visit www.transportexpert.com. Good evening, race fans, and welcome back to TRTM for tonight's coverage of Season 2, Round 7 of the Competizione Performance League GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series. Brought to you by Malwar Transport and Assure Action Transport Expert, live exclusively here on TRTN. As always, I'm Regan Clark. You join us here at the penultimate round of Season 2, back to where we started things off here on an MSV circuit right here in Great Britain before one last stop in the United States next week at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Where are we then in the world? Well, we find ourselves here in Norfolk, at the site of the Snetterton circuit. Founded in 1951 off the grounds of the former RAF Snetterton Heath, it started its life as an airbase for the Royal Air Force, later loaned out to the United States Army Air Force in 1943 during the Second World War, wherein which it launched the B-26 Marauder and B-17 Flying Fortress respectively during its time in military service. After the circuit was, or I should say the airfield, was abandoned in 1948, it fell back into the stewardship of its original landowner, Fred Riches. In 1951, Riches would be approached by two members of the Aston Martin Owners Club, Dudley Coram and Oliver Sear, who proposed the idea to build a motor racing circuit on the now abandoned airfield. Riches agreed on the conditions that no racing was to take place between 10:45 AM and midday, and the racing would cease before evensong, as Riches was a church warden for the local area. It holds rounds each year for the British Touring Car Championship, British GT Championship, British Superbike Championship and TCR UK. It also, for 4 years on the run, 1960 to 1963, held non-championship rounds for Formula 1, known as the Lombank Trophy. Innes Ireland, Jack Brabham, Jim Clark and Graham Hill all won in that prestigious event. The last ever time that we would see open wheel races here at Snetterton would be the GB3 Championship in 2023. Nowadays it is all closed wheel stuff, and it is no exemption for today. Round 7 then of Season 2, getting a look into where we find ourselves on the calendar. Only 2 more stops, with today being one among them. A double sprint round coming up today, back onto the 60 minutes for the end of the championship in Indianapolis. Taking a look at where we find ourselves so far in the championship then, as we draw in on its final moments then, the last 3 races and 2 rounds respectively before the closure of Season 2, with Season 3 right around the corner. Christian Labey leads once again, this time by 32 points, needs an additional 14 points on that gap by the end of this round to solidify his championship chances before Indianapolis. He finds himself ahead of David Tanguay, with Vincent Simard in 3rd place. Giovanni Badiali leaps up to 4th place in the championship now, with Timo de Tosto up to 5th. Kevin Quain 6th place, with Richard Cecil on your screens at the moment down to 7th place, off by a single point there to Quain, and off by 2 points to the back of the top 5. Clinton Bourne behind him in 8th place with 188 points, ahead of Graham Green in 9th with 179. Wright rounds out the top 10 with 172 points. Looking into the itinerary for today, we find ourselves back on the more traditional layout for the double sprint, off and away from the augmented rules and regulations we saw in round 6 at the Circuit of the Americas. That single 20-minute qualifying has now been split back into 2 10-minute qualifyings, interjecting each race, neither of which to find mandatory pit stops in today's event. We're in the midst of 20 minutes of free practice then, as we cut back onto the track to see here. We've been on board with Richard Cecil with Aston Martin, and before we cut away from the number 5, let's get on to the subject of balance of performance for today. Taking a look here, Aston Martin, first subject among the fray, will gain 7 kilos here in round 7 of the championship, 1 away from BMW's mark with 8 kilos, and several away from Porsche, gaining 22 kilos. Most significantly there in the negatives is McLaren and Chevrolet, losing 11 and a whopping 40 kilos. Bear in mind the 6th gen Camaro has dominated this field throughout Season 2 and had one hell of a run in Season 1 as well. In and amongst then the rule of extremes, Mercedes lose only 2 kilos here in the penultimate round of the championship. So taking a look around the field, we just see here with Dylan Vekere down through to turn 1 at Riches. We'll get a full tour of the track by the end of free practice. If not that, it will be into the start of the first of 2 qualifyings today. You see here, LeBay already fastest in the session, 1:55.842 from the number 119 Chevrolet. Timo de Tosto, we saw him to make great progress in the last couple of rounds here. De Tosto back up into the top 5 in the championship, currently second fastest in the session, the only driver to be within a second of the leading 119. Looking to wrap things up then on his championship endeavours by the end of today. Of course, as we mentioned on the run through the championship talks, he's got 32 points over Tanguay in second place in the championship. Now he needs to open that up to 46 points at maximum by the end of this event in order to solidify his championship chances heading into Indianapolis, to the point where he can no longer be numerically caught. So the stakes definitely on the table here for the 119. We can see that's already making his way around there. I believe that to have been Sean Cox, yes, with BMW, on his way down through Williams corner. So LeBay fastest, De Tosto second. We see here Kevin Quain down towards the line, not too far off De Tosto. Now goes up to second fastest and put 3/10 over the McLaren in the number 58. Number 607 now second fastest. Byron Forrest into the fray here with the number 824 Aston Martin ahead of Cecil to make fourth place on the field at the moment. We see him tucked in behind the number 35. That's Didier Potvin, sixth in the session thus far, and ahead of Brandon Carr. In seventh place, the 888 there with Mercedes AMG. Andrew Veldkamp rounds out the last of the times so far, with plenty more to follow by the end of today. You do see, though, nearest to the line, bear in mind 1:55.842 to beat on his fastest time in free practice here. We see down towards the line. Are we to see anything of the likes there from LeBay? Not this time around, not on this lap. We see down towards the line from behind him, Andrew Veldkamp from 8th on the field, stays 8th as he crosses the line from behind him. We do see new wad of cars there, the Jackal among them, now up to 6th fastest there with Chevrolet. In front of him was the BMW of Sean Cox. Number 96 and number 24 coming to the line. So we are about to see here, I believe that to be, yes, that's Casey Miles and Chili Peppers down towards the line there. Peppers 9th, Miles 12th. Number 120 coming in towards the line. All the meanwhile, would like to point out as well, Giovanni Badiali, who took a race win last round in one of the 2 races ran at the Circuit of the Americas. Finds himself now stacked in at second place here. Definitely likely to put a wedge on the championship fight as it stands between LeBay and Tanguay. Speaking of, we've yet to see the number 30 onto the timing chart, so he makes his way down towards Brundle and Nelson, so he's not far from putting his first flying laps onto the timing charts in free practice. In the meantime, then Byron Forrest went faster than Timo de Tosto. It forces McLaren down to the back of the top 5. Now, very early in the session here to call it, but I do imagine we will be looking at another Chevrolet 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with any hopes about it. Double the opportunities for that to happen in today's event. Moreover, the best balance of performance package, the sixth gen Camaro, if we can get the words out, has received all season. Down to the line then, Tanguay. By looks of it there, didn't put anything on the chart, so it was either an invalid lap or an out lap there for the number 30. Nearest to the line, the 607. Third place at the moment for Quain. 747 to the line from behind him. That would be Graham Green with Chevrolet. Much as the same story, though, we saw for Tanguay. No times on the charts there for the Australian. To the line from behind him, the 119. Does extend the margins there. 1:55.667. We see Dylan Vekere from behind him. Put a time into the charts there. 6th place for the 161. Up and ahead of Richard Cecil, but out behind Timo de Tosto and Byron Forrest. 999 to the line from behind them. The Jackal maintains the top 10 position here. You can see tantalizingly close in free practice to being up in 7th place ahead of Richard Cecil. The gap between the two is 150 thousandths of a second. 96 across the line. Casey Miles 13th at the moment in the session. Number 120 coming to the line. Vincent Simard. From behind him, number 484, that's Cal Ford. Simard to the line. Tally doesn't put anything on the charts there, but Ford does for that matter. 7th fastest for the 484 Chevrolet. From behind him as well, we just saw onto the charts go the... I believe that was across the line a moment ago. The 824, third fastest now for Byron Forrest. Up onto that second row by 0.02 of a second over Kevin Quain's Mercedes. I'm inclined to agree there with HCR Anthony in chat saying, surprised there is no Porsche on the grid here for the penultimate round of the championship. It definitely has come as quite a stark change in what the grid is laid out like. The only, I guess you could say, exotic designs, and really that's really a bit of a semantics case for anything that's not front engine and V8 powered, is something that's mid-engine and V8 powered. The McLaren 570S here, two of which on the grid, Timo Tosto and Ivan Sanchez. The rest then, all front-engined and in all some capacity, big block engines, bar maybe perhaps the BMWs that do find themselves on the titular end, but do not underestimate their capacity to engineer a fine inline six. We've seen them go toe-to-toe in the straightaways here with plenty of the cars surrounding them on this grid at this time. But for the bulk of that grid, though, it's all V8 thunder, heralded by three main brands, two main engine manufacturers, though, with that being considered at this time. Number 39 nearest to the line, we see Christophe Dupois from 16th on the field, down towards the line. Can he get up past Miles? Yes, he does, up to 13th as it stands there just behind Peppers. Speaking of Miles, down to the line goes the number 96. Sadly, nothing this time around. As for Chili Peppers, stays in 12th. Saw there, huge leap up the order for the car behind him. Vincent Simard, the number 120 now. Third fastest, pushes Forrest down to 4th. Still upon that second row. You can see those two separated by the scope of it there. 15 thousandths of a second. Remarkable stuff at the start of this free practice session. Or should I say towards the end of this free practice session, because how time flies when you're having fun. 20 minutes of free practice, but only 8 of which left to go before the first of 2 qualifying sessions in this round of the championship. Number 616 nearest to the line, so we're going to try to catch on board here with Veldkamp. You see from behind him the number 30, that's David Tanguay. So we are about to see here Tanguay down towards the line. What time does he put in on the charts here? Second fastest and the only driver so far to be within a 10th of a second of the leading Chevrolet of Le Bay. Bear in mind, this front row position is what he'll be feverishly searching for over the course of the next 2 qualifying sessions. It is pivotal. He keeps the gap as short as possible, if not ahead of Le Bay, at whichever opportunity he can get in order to keep his chances of a championship lively by the time we make our way back to Indianapolis for the last round of the championship. Number 91 across the line a moment ago. In the top 15 there, Ivan Sanchez. You'll have to just forgive us one moment, folks. I think we're having a little issue with our controller. Well, apologies for the interruption there. No idea what happened with the controller there. Completely froze up on us. Nonetheless, only a temporary interruption before we get back into the scope of qualifying coming up just around the corner then. Le Bay still fastest in the session. We still see the 119 out on track, 155.667 a beat, and a new fastest there, 155.392. Now opens the gap up past a 10th, up to nearly 4 tenths there, 373 thousandths to be precise between Le Bay and Tanguay at this time. Number 58 down across the line a moment ago, Timo Tosto still within the top 10 there for McLaren, spearheading the charge for the mid-engine machinery amongst the grid today. Nearest the line, the 30. We do see, though, it appeared to have been an invalidated lap for Tanguay, so down towards the line goes the number 30. As it seems there, even if it were a valid lap, not that we'd see the difference, because still resides at 373 thousandths behind Le Bay. Down towards the line then, Graham Green with Chevrolet. 9th place stays there at this time. .91 across the line a moment ago, Ivan Sanchez still just scraping around the back of the top 15 there, stuck in behind Didier Potvin by 4 tenths of a second. Actually 400 and 2 thousandths to be more precise, so 4 tenths and 2 thousandths to be specific. I'm going to go and catch on board with one of the Aston Martins just making their way down through the third sector here. We see with Byron Forrest. We'll be on board with the Aston then for the rundown of the track here just before the end of free practice. On board then with Byron Forrest. Presently on his way then down through turn 12 at Murray's. So then, for the unofficial tour of the Snetterton circuit, on board with the 824 Byron Forrest, we make our way down the centre straight, down towards turn 1 here at Riches. This long sweeping right-hander. Very little room for error there. No runoff whatsoever, bar the huge variety of grass to your left-hand side. Down towards Montreal, first major attacking spot on track. And this is when the corners really do descend upon you thick and fast here. A great ensemble of corner variety, then into a long sweeping left-hander here down at Palmer. Another straightaway section leading into another attacking spot here as we go barreling down towards the open hairpin left down at Agostini. Named after Giacomo Agostini. Another straightaway section here, but nowhere near as much opportunity to attack down through Hamilton, named after Sir Lewis Hamilton. Into Oggies. This sort of follow-through section here, complemented by the next long sweeping right-hander here at Williams, named after Frank Williams. Onto the Bentley Straight. Naming rather self-explanatory. Bear in mind, this is where you'll definitely see a lot of that advantage creep in for Chevrolet, and I'd also say that for McLaren as well. We saw back in the Circuit of the Americas as we make our way out through Brundle and Nelson in through Bomb Hole Corner. And that's the one and only time you'll hear me say that in the entirety of this broadcast. You can wonder why that might be. Out through turn 10 in towards turn 11. This long sweeping right-hander named after Dudley Coram. Of course, one of the founding members of the circuit. This is Coram Corner, or Coram Curve, sometimes also just Coram. Down at turn 11. Through Murray's then, named after Murray Walker. Down towards the line then, Byron Forrest. As the telemetry shows there, sadly, looks to have been without an improvement, but still a mighty tour indeed from the Aston Martin. Number 824 down across the line. 2 minutes left to go then here in free practice. Things still looking lively out on track. Namely up over that front row as well, and I'd also say, just to put a mention in there, for that second row, Timo de Tosto now ahead of Giovanni Battiali by 3 thousandths of a second. So really, he is fighting a war by his lonesome in that top 10, up against an ensemble there of V8 machinery all around him. He himself packing a V8, but behind the driver's seat. He does find himself somewhat alienated from the rest of the field, and he's pushed down to 4th there by Clinton Bourne. The number 6, now up to 3rd fastest. Ahead, looking at it there, not by a great deal, so it appears. And Giovanni Battiali says, well, I'll have that second row back off of you, and pushes Timo de Tosto to the back of the top 5. Could this be all the way out of the top 5 as well with the arrival of Vincent Simard? Driver who took race wins over the course of the Competizione Performance League Jaguar GT3 Revival Series, knows his way around V8 machinery. Down across the line, bear in mind, needed 6 thousandths of a second over de Tosto to take 5th place. He's on to his last wad of flying laps here in free practice before we get on to the first of our 2 qualifying sessions in this session today. Nearest to the line, the 24, so we go to find Chili Peppers, 15th in the session so far for Aston Martin, on his way down through Coram. A little bit of trouble, though, through Murray's, and that brings premature end to his free practice endeavours here. 161 nearest to the line, that'll be Vecchare in the number 11. As we see there in the background, that was Timo de Tosto peeling back into the pit lane. Satisfied with a top 5 as it stands there, but it is still under threat by the 120 being out on track at this time. Of course, there's no points for the practice sessions, so nothing too much to worry about at this time for the 58. Of course, it does still stand. There is formidable challenge to be expected on the road ahead for McLaren. We see Clinton Bourne across the line, now up to second fastest, so puts a bit of a block there between LeBay and Tanguay. Now, that's great news for LeBay. That means an extra position has now been formed up and could very well form up again between himself and Tanguay over the course of the next qualifying session, potentially even into the race itself, courtesy of the number 6, who's been quite the heavy hitter in the qualifying sessions over the course of this season in his time with, his second season, I should say, with Chevrolet. Down towards the line then, Vincent Simard, again catching up on 2 wheels here. He's starting to grow a bit of a habit of this one. The exit of Murray's corner, down towards the line then, Simard. Can he make the top 5 at the end of free practice and push DeTosto to the 3rd row? Not this time around. McLaren take that 3rd row up and ahead of Simard. 7:47 across the line. That was the 7:07, my mistake there. That's Stephen Black with Mercedes AMG. The only driver then left out on track, Dylan Becquerel, 10th place at the moment for Aston Martin. Looking to force a greater gap here between some of the Chevrolets around him towards the back of that top 10. Graham Green, his nearest target at this time. Those two, as you can see there, separate by just taking a rough gauge of the maps there, about 700ths of a second. So very, very close stuff to be had here between Aston Martin, Mercedes, McLaren, and Chevrolet inside of that top 10. BMW, sadly, just snuck out of the top 15 there. They're in the top 20, courtesy of Sean Cox. More on that later on, though, as we get in to the qualifying session here. Just as we quickly refresh the timers, make sure everything is A-OK. A bit of a later start there on the timing systems, but nonetheless out on track. First among the fray, Byron Forrest in the 824, following on his trails the 607, the 58, and the 119, as well as the number 5 there just in the background as well. So catching back on board with Byron Forrest as he leads the charge here in round 7's first of 2 qualifying sessions. This is 10 minutes of qualifying then, interjected by 30 minutes of racing at race 1, then another qualifying session, then another race session before the end of round 7. As we stay on board here then with Byron Forrest, let's get on to the discussion of qualifying predictions. Taking a look at things then, Christian LeBay once again leading the charge, but as you can see by less than a second, to a very close 2nd and 3rd there between Bourne and DeTosto. Currently those two weighing up in the current gap of about, looking here, 43 thousandths between Bourne and DeTosto. 2nd from 3rd, Vecchiere 4th, Forrest on your screens at the moment in 5th, Ford 6th, Quain 7th, Peppers 8th, Green 9th, and Winnings in 10th. That's Wishful Winnings, a driver we've seen over on VSR. Recently made the move over to Competizione Performance League in the last couple of days. We were hoping to see him today, but I don't actually know 100% if he will be on this grid. We'll hope to see him on the grid nonetheless. Down the Bentley straight then, on with Byron Forrest, who will form the basis of our benchmark time here in Quali 1 of 2. From behind him, you can see the 607, the 58, and the 119 warming their tyres up down the Bentley straight in through Brundle and Nelson. Will be once again on board with the 824. We already had the track tour courtesy of an on-board ride here with the 824 Aston Martin. Now it will lead the charge for qualifying, making his way through Coram. So we'll leave you on board with the flying lap from Byron Forrest. Taking a look from the view over the dashboard on the 824 as we go heading down the centre straight onto the first of our flying laps then today. Telemetry available there in the top left-hand side. You can see that's currently the indicator over his fastest lap set during, I believe, free practice there. Actually, no, it's might even be a reference marker from the last lap just gone. It's a little confusing indeed, nonetheless, showing promising signs. You see there peeling out of the way to give him some space, the 616 of Andrew Veldkamp just before Palmer at turn 3. The good thing about Snetterton there is, much like a lot of MSV circuits, to name some examples, you have the Graham Hill Bend down at Brands Hatch. It has a very similar catch method there. You can see this almost latticed metal underlay just under the gravel, and it's what allows the drivers to just sort of hook a wheel up on there and not spin the wheels up. They're able to grab onto those little metal pieces that hold the ground firm and dig through. It's the one bit of runoff these drivers will hope to get on any corner, other than the green concrete slices you see there just past the rumble strips. So with these 10-minute qualifying sessions, unlike what we saw last week in the Circuit of the Americas with that single large 20-minute qualifying session, we're not wrestling with track limits this time around, but we will be wrestling with the advent of time itself. 6.5 minutes left to go already before the first flying laps have even been set. So it really does put everything on its head here. Quick reaction times and early pickup to performance is absolutely vital in these shorter qualifying sessions. That's been the mode throughout the season so far. We see then with Byron Forrest, a great opening lap from the 8.24 down towards the line to form the baseline of our times here in qualifying 1 of 2. The 8.24, 1:56.707. Then from behind him, we see arrive in the 6.07, second fastest. Then Di Tosto now up to fastest from behind them. We see the arrival there of another Mercedes, I believe that to have been, yes, the 616 that moved over not too long ago. The 119 coming down towards the line here. LeBay doesn't put a time on the charts, but one who does is Richard Cecil. From behind them, we see the arrival of Vincent Simard up to the fastest time of 1:56.403. Tanguay in 5th fastest. Bourne from behind him, 6th fastest. We see Sanchez from behind Bourne, 8th fastest. Mals to the line from behind them. And I believe just hiding in the background there is Vekere as well. The 96, 10th. The 161 in 1st. 7:47 down towards the line. Graham Green 9th in the session. Chili Peppers in the 24 we saw in the background there making his way to the line. 11th fastest. You can see there in the background as well is Giovanni Battiali. As it appears, stiflingly so for the 111. Couldn't find a valid time in that last run around. Christophe Dupois then enters the timing charts 13th. 484, Cal Ford to the line from 18th on the field, stays there as he couldn't find a valid lap in that last run. Number 35, Didier Potvin, 11th. Then we see Sean Cox, the number 74 down to the line. Same story as we've seen for quite a few then today. Stephen Black to the line in the 707, same story. Actually, no, never mind there for Black. It was a late update, 13th. 888 to the line, Brandon Carr. We'll see here if it's a late update like the 707 down towards the line. Yes, it is. 15th, the 888. So then, hurtling back towards the line, here's the same ensemble that started this qualifying session off. The 607, the 824, and the 58. 824 then, Byron Forrest to the line. Then we'll be on with the 607 of Kevin Quain. Forrest second. Now Quain's to the line. And back up to pole position there. The 58 takes it right off of him. Up to pole position then. Timo de Tosto in the 58 McLaren. The 119 comes down towards the line here. So here comes Christian LeBay onto the timing charts and takes pole position right off of him. Then the 120 coming to the line. Vincent Simard from 6th on the field stays there. So it appears. In the number 30 on his trails there. These two now form the basis of the 4th row, 7th and 8th. The recent introduction then of the number 6 end of the fray, Clinton Bourne into that top 5. And now ahead of Dylan Vekere. 96 to the line. Casey Mals with Mercedes AMG. 15th at this time. The 24 coming to the line. We saw an exchange of position there up to 11th for Chili Peppers. The 111 of Giovanni Battiali. You see just hanging behind him there in this very bizarre, almost candy floss pink 111. Still without a time to his name here. 3 minutes left to go. Getting to be a little bit hair-raising here for Battiali. Of course, taking a look back through the last couple of weeks, we'll see that Battiali picked up a race win in race 1 of 2 at the Circuit of the Americas, and then further back at round 4 the championship at the Hungaroring. So with every right here for himself to possibly hunt down a 3rd race win this season and put even further upset on the championship fight between LeBay and Tanguay. It is rather perplexing then with so much of the session being covered and still no time to his name. So then the same flurry of drivers back towards the line then. Kevin Quain across the line. We see Timo de Tosto was on to pole position for one moment there. Now hangs back on the front row. 119 across the line there. 1:55.322. New fastest lap. Now up just shy of 3/4 of a second to Timo de Tosto down in 2nd place. Number 30 across the line. David Tanguay could it be the writing on the wall here for the number 30 when you consider all Labey has to do, looking back into the calculations for a potential early championship win? He needs to open that gap, currently 32 points between the leading pair, up by an additional 14 points to 46 by the end of this round. From where he stands at the moment, that is more than feasible, with Tanguay now having most recently been pushed down to 9th with the introduction of Giovanni Badiali. Better late than never then for the Italian talent. Second row at the moment. You can see really not too far off the chances of being upon the front row. What separates him from Timo de Tosto, a measly 0.04 of a second. Even closer still when you consider the back of the podium, currently heralded by the 607 of Kevin Quain with Mercedes AMG. Nearest to the line, the 74. You see here for Sean Cox on the timing chart, 16th there, just shy of the top 15 by 0.02 of a second behind Didier Potvin. So the chances still remain there as the first of the accolades to be collected for the hunt here of the 74. To find his way up to the top 15. 888 coming to the line. Brandon Carr. Sadly, no improvement found there. Will there be one for the Jackal? Approaching the line from behind him. Yes, into 15th place goes the gold-clad 999. 824 to the line. Byron Forrest 6th at the end of that last lap. Beats the bell for one more flying lap here. We do see that the timers were a little bit short on our end. That's our apologies, but we do see that the session has officially ended. And with it, Timo de Tosto approaches the line, staying in second place. Number 5, Richard Cecil to the line. Can he break into the top 10? Sadly, not this time around. From behind him, the number 30, now 7th at the end of this qualifying session. The number 6 from behind him is 5th. Number 91 to the line here. Ivan Sanchez comes into the pit lane. The Spaniard contempt with 14th at this time. We see from behind him approaching the checkered flag at the end of qualifying here. The 111, Giovanni Badiali. We saw how close he was to the front row. And as he crosses the line, he does make the front row, forcing even more of a wedge over what could be a very close, or would have been a very close, fight for the championship between Tanguay and Labey. It is anything but here in Snetterton. Meanwhile, we do finally see Wishful Winnings competing here in the number 233. 14 for the end of this session, reluctantly outside of that top 10 as per predictions, but better late than never for this appearance by the 233. It's going to be exciting then after what has been quite the hiatus for Wishful Winnings. Last time we saw him was, I believe, back in Season 8 of VSR Phoenix. So it has been a long, long time since we've seen this one on the grid. Now joining up on the National here in the GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series. Something a little bit closer to his preferred time zone. As we see here, among several drivers, the 607 to the line, we see nearest was the 999, but now backs out of it, so back on board with Kevin Quain. Bear in mind the chances were definitely there on the run just before Murray's for him to hunt down a chance at third. It is still on the table here. 25 thousandths is all he needs. Across the line he goes. Sadly, just couldn't find it at the end of qualifying 1. So then, looking back into the session itinerary, we're just at the end of the first qualifying session, onto 30 minutes of racing in just a moment's time, and then following on from that, 10 minutes of qualifying once again, and another 30-minute race. With the end of that first qualifying session, Labey on pole, Badiali on the front row, De Tosto third, Quain fourth, Bourne fifth. We get a full run of the grid in a moment's time. Before we do that, though, it's worth noting some of the closest gaps on that field you could find in and around the top 5 there. Third, fourth, and fifth separated front to back by 75 thousandths of a second. There are even closer gaps therein when you take a look in more local positions. 6th there to 7th, 7th to perhaps even 8th there. So before we get on to the scope of the full grid, we do have one article of news, fortunately, here, and it comes from the British Touring Car Championship, as the most recent announcements come out that Dan Rowbottom will be joining Plato Racing for the 2026 Quick Fit British Touring Car Championships. He'll be driving the new Mercedes A35 Saloon, the latest car to join the grid with this brand new outfit, heralded by Jason Plato. Oh, this is going to be an exciting season to follow, of course, with Power Max Racing announcing some time ago they'd be moving away from the Vauxhall and over towards Audi for this season. Of course, we're still yet to see whether or not that comes to fruition with everything that did happen to them in the last couple of years. It will make development efforts rather difficult. We will wait to see, though, what the official confirmation is on that. But what we do know right here and now, Dan Rowbottom will be joining Plato Racing, leaving behind what has been a great time with the Alliance Napa Racing team. So then, taking a look at grid 1 of 2 today here for race 1 of round 7 of Season 2 of the GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series by Competizione Performance League. Christian Labay on pole position, then alongside him is Giovanni Badiali in second place, Timo de Tosto in third with Kevin Quain fourth. Clinton Bourne rounds out the top 5. It definitely is a much more sparse ensemble for Chevrolet there, despite a front row lockout. Normally, we've come to see in the height of their dominance a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, even on the race starts, let alone the race ends. Bear in mind, with 40 kilos off of the Camaro, we really would have expected to see a little bit more today. Of course, plenty still left to be had over the course of this race and the qualifying to follow and the race therein after that. 6th place for Byron Forrest with David Tangway in 7th. Apologies there. Dylan Vecchiere in 8th with Vincent Simard in 9th. Cal Ford rounds out the top 10. Richard Cecil in 11th. Graham Green in 12th with Chili Peppers 13th. Wish for Winnings 14th. And Evan Sanchez in 15th. Sean Cox in 16th. Didier Potvin in 17th. And the Jackal in 18th. Christophe Dupois 19th. Brandon Carr in 20th ahead of Stephen Black in 21st. Casey Miles 22nd. And Andrew Veldkamp in 23rd. So then, just shy of 2 minutes before the start of that formation lap, heralding the arrival of race 1 of 2 today here in Snetterton. Major attacking spots then to be found down at Montreal, also on the run in towards Agostini, and on the run down the Bentley Straight in towards the likes of Brundle and Nelson. It's also worth noting potential to go side by side down through Murray's, but very limited availability, especially with the size of some of the cars occupying that major crunch zone between the middle of the top 10, the middle of the top 20. So that comprises your sort of run there from 5th to 15th, where you're definitely likely to see a lot of drivers crunch together. That's where we get the bulk of our incidents and also the bulk of our early doors overtakes. That's not to say we won't see anything in the top 5 here. Do expect a lively start indeed, especially from that front row. We've seen how strong Badiali starts have been in the past. Today, likely to be no exemption. It's going to be curious to see how it all unfolds for David Tangway. He could be seeing the curtain call on his championship hopes here in Season 2 in the first of 2 races. From where he stands, 7th on the field at the moment, he's away from Christian Labay, who, if he finishes in the leading position without the fastest lap, 45 points, and obviously finishing 7th there for Tangway would mean only 28 points. Doing the maths means that the points gap would increase by 17 points, where in which the margin only required it increase by 14. Bear in mind, it can increase by 14, but still hold on to the chance into that second race. It means that the gap has to increase by 14 by the end of this event, with both races included as part of that equation. There could still be something in the second race that will keep him within the fight come Indianapolis, but it is going to be very, very slim for that to happen here with the near flawless track record of the 119. Speaking of, we're on board with Labay, taking us away on the formation lap here in Snetterton. The field forming up behind him as we peel away then down towards Riches. So, of course, we flashed it up earlier on, but taking another look back into the previous wins, you'll note that bar 2 occasions, Labay has won every single event in the championship so far. The only other driver to do so starts alongside him on that front row. Giovanni Badiali won in round 4 and the first of 2 races last week in round 6. So far, it maintains the stead of a 100% win record for Chevrolet with their 6th generation Camaro. This particular unit, of course, we've mentioned on several occasions before, but for those perhaps out of the loop, this particular unit, the GT4R, was engineered by the folks over at Pratt Miller Engineering, the same head boffins behind the creation of such magnificent racing machines as the Corvette C6R, C7R and C8R in the world of the IMSA Sports Car Championship. When they were given the opportunity to produce a car for SRO's GT4 regulations, they had to do some enhanced tinkering with the Camaro, originally planning to use the full ZL1 platform, hence where you get the more aggressive physique of the car here with the much more aggressive front fascia and the rear spoiler. But however, they were restricted from being able to use the LT4 engine, the supercharged 6.2 litre unit that ships with the Camaro ZL1. So they had to get creative. Superchargers, of course, banned in SRO's regulations, meant they had to downsize and go to the LT1 engine. Now, based off the same platform, of course, 6.2 litre V8 engine, but this one from the Camaro SS. The difference? Naturally aspirated. No superchargers, no bells, no whistles, just all NA grit. So they slapped that into this car, up-tuned it to make it just as powerful as what they would need out of the LT4. Lightened the car up, and under balance of performance today, it is a feather on that front row. Bear in mind, you would have to look as far down here on this grid. I believe getting a look down the order, you'd have to look as far down as 16th before you found anything that wasn't packing 8 cylinders, either in front of or behind the driver. That'll be the inline 6 of the number 74 BMW. With the almost extinction now of Porsche in this championship, we do find ourselves really in the land of the V8. Whether it's made by McLaren, Chevrolet or AMG for that matter, V8 reigns supreme here in the GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series. Where better may the V8 engine then suit than a series like this? Down through Coram then. In towards Murray's, we begin the formation process. You can see they're raring to go off of the front row, the twin Camaros, the 119 and the 111. So you can see there the enthusiasm in Badiali, but don't let that get the better of you down towards the line. Of course, we've seen those penalties creep in last round for quite a few drivers. Let's see if history has a habit of repeating itself. One of 2 races then, set to come here in Snetterton. Race 1 of 2 here in round 7, down towards the line. 23 cars in all. Rolling down towards the line then. 2 Chevrolets away from the front of the field. 12 on one side, 11 on the other. We're green and racing for the first time here in Snetterton of 2 today. 30 minutes against the clock and a great start from LeBay with the 111 trailing from behind but tucking back into the racing line come Rich's corner at turn 1. Great start then by the 119. We see the 111 carrying quite a hefty bit of momentum to charge down towards turn 2. Couldn't find any ground of it. Meanwhile, in the background there, we see trouble for Cal Ford on the run through Montreal. Meanwhile, looking down the line, we can see already plenty of drivers getting side by side. Chili Peppers there with Wishful Winnings. We see up the order Dylan Vecre looking to get side by side with his fellow Aston Martin's Byron Forrest and the likes there of Richard Cecil. Looking up in front, this is the point of view of the Jackal, getting a look in with Winnings v Peppers. This is in the fight currently for what appears to be 11th place there. Could even be higher than that. Of course, with the heads-up display having a little bit of a fit there on the opening lap, we do have to take a bit of a breather here to adjust for position. We see up on the inside of Peppers goes the 999 down through Agostini. Looks to have the run on him down towards Hamilton. Now, this is where the track does tighten up quite a bit, so he's got to back out of it here. Down through Hamilton, in towards Oggies. Up in front, dust kicked up in his eyes as he sees now escaping from sight. Is that 223, Wishful Winnings up in front of them. We saw a little bit of trouble there for Sean Cox. He made a great start in today's endeavours. Now up to 11th place there for BMW as he makes his way around Williams. We see in the background there, that was Graham Green kicking up quite a considerable lump of grass as he now falls in behind the 233, I should say. I had the habit of saying the 223 earlier. No, the 233 of Wishful Winnings on his first drive on this field. Looking here, trouble out through the likes of Nelson. Now towards turn 10. Byron Forrest sandwiched between his fellow Aston Martins up in front. We are seeing here the scope of warfare start to kick off for Chevrolet. Getting a look up through the order as we quickly glance through here at some of the Mercedes cars. Going to get a look on board then with the Chevys up in that top 5. You see here for LeBay and Badiali, they have already tore themselves away from the pack and also having put great distance over the rest of the field here. We see is Timo De Tosto, the McLaren, currently up on the podium, 3rd place and ahead of David Tanguay, who has made a considerable leap in his opening charge here to reignite his championship endeavours. Behind him, Kevin Quain now marks the back of the top 5, and that makes 6th place for the most recent overtake out through to turn 1 by Clinton Bourne in the number 6. We see here an onslaught of Aston Martins making their way out through Montreal, and recently under attack by the 120 of Vincent Simard was Dylan Vekere and Richard Cecil on the run through to Palmer at turn 3. Behind them, Sean Cox still staying close. Now, we perhaps may have underestimated the inline 6 in the number 74 as we see him giving a good go here, looking up the inside down towards Agostini on the number 5 of Richard Cecil, and there is a bit of contact there between the pair of them. I believe they're looking at the 74. Lost a lot of steam, letting the number 5 back out in front by the time we hit Hamilton. Looking here, Vincent Simard soon to make battle with Byron Forrest. Trying to catch on board then with the 119. We do see, though, further down the order, some very close fighting to be had between these 3 Chevrolets, the Jackal, Graham Green, and on board at the moment with Wishful Winnings in the 233. This is all fighting as it stands then for 12th place as they make their way down the Bentley Straight. Getting a look back in on board with some of the other drivers here. We do just quickly see down through Brundle and Nelson, the number 5, trying to break away there from Sean Cox. Both of them run into a bit of trouble in the background. We also see up on 2 wheels was Wishful Winnings. Off in the background there was a huge bit of calamity down through Brundle and Nelson. Getting a look on the replays there, sadly unable to find on board with the cars just as the time had happened. Believe taking a look there. Oh yes, no, you could see freeze frames of it. That was a bunch of the Mercedes cars there. I believe among them Mal's Black, and I believe there was Car as well, caught up in a huge prang. You can see where it started down at Brundle just as we cut through the cameras. Huge incident out back there for Mercedes. Meanwhile, for Richard Cecil, things look to have soured for the number 5. You can see the scrapes upon the rear bumper. Can only indicate one thing, that he has been shoved massively out of commission. Or so we're led to believe. As we see, now looking in with the top 5, David Tanguay ahead of Clinton Bourne at this time. The number 6 still hunting down the number 30 from behind them. The 607 now drops out of the top 5 entirely. Byron Forrest sizes up his chances here to make his way onto the 3rd row, but he's got very close company from the 120 kicking up on 2 wheels here. The Chevrolet's holding no bars in this race. Out through the Oggies, the 120 of Simard in hot pursuit then of what looks to be war. Contact there between Bourne and Forrest. That opens up the doors for the 120 to surf on through. That's 1 position then off of the number 6. Could it be 2 off of the 824? Down the Bentley Straight we go. Up in front of them, you can see Kevin Quain relishing in an extra position back up to 4th place. 120 now attacking the 824 down through to Brundle and Nelson. Behind them, the 161 sizes up chances over the number 6. Out back, we still have incredibly close fighting to speak of here. Sean Cox versus Graham Green versus the Jackal versus Wishful Winnings. This now splits down the middle to form the basis of 2 fights on what was originally a 5-man scrap, including Ivan Sanchez down in 15th place. We now start to see here, tunneling in on that 74, Graham Green, hunting down Sean Cox for 11th. Also looking at this time, again, that scope of Vekere v Bourne. This is for 8th on the field. Further down the line as well, Velkamp v Mals. This is for 18th. A lot of action then to divulge in the opening 10 minutes. Just quickly looking in here, the 616 does have the chance out through Murray's with the run down the centre straight. Veldkamp sizing up 18th off of Mals, but he looks just a little too far away to commit to a lunge up the inside. As we see there, swinging over the nose. Number 96 more than comfortable to maintain position. Meanwhile, for Simard, this is definitely one to keep an eye on. So take a look in then with either side of this fight, trying to catch on board with a defending angle on with Byron Forrest with Aston Martin. You can see they're looming over his rear view in that fight for 6th place. Here's Vincent Simard, half a second away. Meanwhile, the 999's in trouble there between Palmer and Agostini. That's the Jackal, one of those Chevrolets caught up in the fight just in and around the top 15 not too long ago. Was fighting most prominently with Graham Green and Wishful Winnings as part of that 3-way fight between the Chevrolets. Now he drops in behind the 484 Cal Ford. Down towards the line then, Byron Forrest still being pursued. We saw that big slide for the 161 of Dylan Vekere, properly caning it down through the likes of Brundle and Nelson. You see in the background there, big step onto the grass for the 120. Crisis averted, nearly went all the way across the grass on the inside of Coram at turn 11. That could have been a very early stop to his fight of 6th place. It has put a bit of a breather on it for now for Byron Forrest. Now just nearly a second ahead of the 120. He can breathe a sigh of relief for the time being. Drivers who can't, though, we see here trouble for Potvin and for Veldkamp, for that matter. Getting a look with the Mercedes there. The 616, Andrew Veldkamp, in serious trouble. Stranded on what appears to be there the run through Brundle and Nelson. Well, nonetheless, yellow flags currently out then for Sector 3 at this time. We see here an ongoing fight, the number 6 versus the 161. These two have been absolutely hell for leather since their fight began for 8th place. Born v Vekere. Down through the likes of Palmer at turn 3. Meanwhile, looking up in front, there is the beginnings then, the kindlings as it were, of a fight between the 58 and the 30. Timo de Tosto defending away from the advance of this driver on screen here, David Tanguay, making sizable ground in the last couple of laps here over the McLaren. Now, bear in mind, we're still in yellow flag conditions for Sector 3 at this time from where the drivers stand. They're in green flag, but they're quickly coming up as we cross over the sector lines. We see here for LeBay. As he crosses over the sector lines, this is where we have the yellow flags out. You can see the marshals showing the yellow flags. That 616 is still very, very close by to the track. Not a great deal can be done at this time as they pass out by the 616. As for the remaining pair of that fight we saw from earlier on, of course, there was trouble for the 999, so now it is just the 233 and the 747. Green v Winnings for 11th place. Behind them, Ivan Sanchez gains ground, but not close enough to be within that fight proper just now. Quickly checking back in here with Byron Forrest, 6th place, still defending away from. He's actually been able to put even more ground up over the advance of the 120 at this time. As for the Battle of Bourne v Vekere, same story there. The number 6 gaining ground up over the 161. Now, I want to get a look in here with these three. Battle of the V8s towards the back of the field. The Jackal, of course, we saw trouble earlier on for the 999 on the heads up. Now out past Casey Miles. Brandon Carr and his iron sights. Now, bear in mind, these two Mercedes cars were caught up in that incident from earlier on in the race. Getting a look back in, of course, to that instant replay. We saw it in the background when we were checking in with some of the other fights. We saw the start of it there down at Brundle, the aftermath out past Nelson. Several cars caught up in the mix there. I believe also reviewing that footage once again, you do find for just a few frames there, that car right behind Miles at the moment, Cal Ford, was also caught up in that incident. Now getting out past Miles, later onto the brakes in towards Montreal, holds his ground and takes up the helm of 18th place. Nice, neat and tidy there for Cal Ford in the 484. Looking at Forrest v Simard, it is getting very, very close now as it stands. So looking to go and catch back on board with the Chevrolet at this time, the 120, with the Aston Martin very clearly in his iron sights now. Nothing to stand between the pair. The 120 on board then with Simard in that soon-to-be fight of 6th place. Bear in mind, the number 30 and the number 58 not far away from a fight at this time. That might be worth going to check on board with here as the 120 does kick up on 2 wheels. Very nearly puts himself head over heels, as we saw historically has been the case for quite a few drivers over the course of this championship. You see here for Tanguay, now very much so firmly in that fight of 3rd place. We'll stay on board then with this one. In that last lap, these two separate by only 100th of a second to the benefit of the 58. In through to Montreal. Meanwhile, 74 now in trouble. That is for Sean Cox. Same area that we saw the 616 stranded in not long ago. Actually, this one just a little later down the track. This is actually between turns 10 and 11 for the 74 at this time. And that's back in the green flag conditions, as we see on the mini-map. They're getting back up and running around Coram at turn 12. No further issues there in terms of track safety. Meanwhile, it's worth getting back on board here, just tabbing between the two fights, as now we see things re-engage on the fight of 6th place for Vincent Simard v Byron Forrest. Advancing then up to the back of the 824, out through Oggies into Williams. Caught in the slipstream now. The 120 able to much more easily reel in the 824. But it's under these corners here where he's found continued trouble, especially there up through Nelson. That has been a continued issue for the 120 at this time. It's also been a case where a lot of the curbs on the track, not just the one down at Nelson at turn 9, have had continued troubles here for Vincent Simard. Now, just briefly cutting away here to see that things are now very much in stalemate between the fight of 6th and the fight of 3rd. Much are the same parallels here, but we do cut back on board with the battle of 6th place to see here from Simard's point of view as he gets the run to try and go around the outside down at turn 1 at Riches. Can't find any ground of it on the entry of the corner. Can he find better luck on the exit? The answer still yet to really be revealed there. You see holding centre mass of the road. Good defence so far from Forrest, but is he leaving himself open for a switchback? No, because he parks the bus there right on the apex. Very clever indeed. He's cutting off a lot of that momentum that the 120 needs in this situation to survive. Bear in mind, behind him, there is an ongoing fight, much to the same as what we've seen for 3rd and for 6th. It's the fight for 8th between Bourne and Vekere. Super close, as we saw in the background in Sector 1 on the run in towards Montreal. Speaking of Bourne, let's see if we can go to catch on board with the number 6. Just looking to locate them at this time. There's the number 6 of Bourne. Up and ahead of Vekere at this time with the Aston Martin, putting on solid fight back for 8th place. As for Tanguay, now 8/10 away from De Tosto. That's nearly up to a second here. So one of the more active fights of the Camaros we've observed has been the 120s with Byron Forrest. Now getting a look on board, we've been watching with the attacking point of view as we quickly cut down here. This is to 11th, Green versus Winnings. Making our way then down the Bentley straight, and as so it appears there, very little fight back from the 747. Lets the 233 roll on by into 11th. Now going on board with the 824, we saw the attacking angle of this fight for 6th place for some time now. We see its defending angle. Back on board with Byron Forrest, still in that fight for 6th place. So halfway through the session so far, LeBay leads from Badiali, De Tosto 3rd, Tanguay 4th, and Quain in 5th. As you see here, Byron Forrest on your screens in 6th, and background there, 7th place for Vincent Simard as he takes a big chunk of grass with him on the exit of Riches at turn 1. 8th place then for Bourne, Vekere 9th, and Cecil rounds out the top 10. Winnings in 11th, Green 12th, Sanchez 13th, Peppers 14th, Dupois 15th, Jackal 16th, Ford 17th, Carr 18th, Potvin 19th, and Black in 20th. Miles 21st, Cox 22nd, and Veldkamp in 23rd. Presently one of the closer fights we've been observing, but let's take a look at all of the close by gaps as according to the data. Of course, we've seen earlier was the fight for 3rd place. That's still been held in stalemate between the Chevrolet and the McLaren for the longest time in this session so far. These two held at arm's length for the majority of today's race. And of course, we've been following on with very closely here that fight for 6th place, Forrest v Simard. These two have found themselves very close to one another on a multitude of occasions in the last 17 or so minutes. Behind them was an ongoing fight, but has now seemed to have dissipated in the time since. That was Bourne v Vekere for 8th place. Down the order, we see Green v Winnings pick back up where they last left off on the Bentley straight. Now, last time we saw these two was a case where the 747 moved over to let the 233 on past. Now, we don't currently understand the full story. Perhaps there's some gentlemanly conduct between the two Chevys on their run down towards Brundle and Nelson, right behind them. Oh my goodness gracious me! That is a huge wipe out there for the 233. That is not the first time this season we have seen a Chevrolet up over its side. Fortunately, now I'm able to contain myself from the shock of the first time we saw it in Barcelona. It was from Clinton Bourne. Get a look at this one by Wishful Winnings. Slides upon his door, back onto the tips of his wheels, bounces to the wall. What on earth? What is it with these Chevrolets here, even with the most amount of weight taken away from them, that makes them so benignly top heavy? Well, to be fair as well, looking there at Nelson, it is a big sausage curb. I mean, this is no cocktail sausage. That's a bratwurst on the inside of that corner. And with that, that really did kick him up on his shoulder there. That would have been a very, very frightening run indeed for Wishful Winnings. Taking a look out past his... I'm trying to get a gauge of it here, out past his left-hand side and seeing the ground about 4 to maybe 5 inches from his face. That is definitely quite worrying. Now, if I had a penny for every time a Chevrolet has rolled in this championship, I'd have 3 pennies. Now, that's not a lot, but it is confusing that it's happened this many times. In the meantime, then, Ivan Sanchez takes helm of the fight. Now ahead of Chili Peppers by 6/10 of a second. He's 12th. Graham Green soars away then by 6/10 as now the fight starts to pick up between McLaren and Aston Martin. One does wonder, though, will either of them be able to catch the 747 on the run round Williams? You can see that the McLaren isn't losing too much steam here, but it's enough to be noticeable compared to his fight with the Aston Martin behind. These three stuck again in stalemate after that very bizarre incident for the 233. You can see there, just looming in the background, appearing in a plume of smoke. Like a mirage in the desert then, the 233 has done some real bizarre works. Well then, not to distract from the fights currently going on track, Sanchez v Peppers v Green on their run round Coram. Now, also taking a look around the field back into that top 5, we do see things have re-engaged between Tanguay and De Tosto at this time. Same story there and applies for Simard v Forest. Now, of course, to mention back on that point earlier, I said if I had a penny for every time I seen a Chevy roll. Now, if it was for a car, well, we also had Porsches go head over heels. Now, this was media given to us by... This is by Carson Claus back in the Hungaroring, up around turn 1, where he also went head over heels. I mean, it is simply bizarre how these cars are able to do something quite like that. And goes to show just how dangerous some of these curbs are. 9.5 minutes left to go then in race 1, and what an exciting opening race it has been so far, rife with battling and definitely some bizarre talking points. Presently among those fights we're seeing here Simard v Forest, also up the order again, still Tanguay v De Tosto. Now you've got to hand it here to Timo De Tosto. He's been able to hold on tooth and nail to control of this last of the podium spot. Now taking a look into the standings here for De Tosto, recently made his way back up into the top 5 after back-to-back fourth place finishes, I should say, in round 6 of the Circuit of the Americas. What he stands upon right now in the 58 is his best result of the season so far. That is if he can hold on to it in 8.5 minutes time. His best result of the season was those back-to-back fourth places in the Circuit of the Americas to take home 3rd. Once again, another improvement to be found. For Tanguay here, there is quite heavy stakes involved in all of this. Of course, needs to minimize the amount of damage dealt to his points tally between himself and Christian Lebay in order to keep things lively between the pair by the time they head to Indianapolis. He really wants to bring this down to the very, very last note of it all. Does not want to leave anything up to spare in this round, and he has worked rather eloquently upon this grid today to make sure of that. Started down in 7th, made up 3 positions here with a chance to move up an extra 4th onto the podium. Behind them, we're starting to see the advance here, the next phase of fighting for Forest and Simard, as they are pushing 4th into the iron sights here. The 607, Kevin Quain. So he marked the back of that top 5, was by his lonesome for the majority of this race, just a little too far away to be fighting with anyone. Now, as 1.2 seconds draws near, the 824 is getting closer and closer. Direct line of sight then on most occasions with the Mercedes during the course of his laps. He's tunneled in on that AMG. He's going to be hunting him down for the next 7 minutes. You can see it in the way that he's got stern control of that vehicle so far. This is Byron Forrest in his element. He knows what to do here. He has played these games before, and it is not his first rodeo here in Snetterton. Meanwhile, down the line, taking a look back in, the saga of Green v Sanchez v Peppers. All instead of 11th place at this time. 3 different manufacturers, Chevrolet, McLaren and Aston Martin. Now, unlike the circuit of the Americas, this is a case where the McLaren can't extract 100% of that top-end advantage it has over Chevrolet just because the straights aren't long enough to have a lot of that player heavy hand. Now, of course, that was 3/4 of a mile of back straight we had at the circuit of the Americas. We're at a far cry to find anything in that range here on either of the 2 straightaways, or the 2 main straightaways, I suppose you could say, the Bentley Straight and the Senna Straight here at the Snetterton 300 circuit. So meanwhile, back up into the scope of things here. McLaren steadfast to hold on to that podium. We can see though the 30 starting to bear his teeth a little bit here. We're starting to see the 30 get pushed to its limit. Case in point there on the exit of Agostini. Exploring every single divot of the track here for even a slight modicum of improvement. Meanwhile, we are definitely seeing now Byron Forrest has locked on to that 607. Kevin Quain is at risk of losing 5th place because it doesn't really seem to be the case that the Aston Martin is showing any signs of slowing down. One of the best parts of this championship, of course, the fact that it doesn't have a team's championship, meaning that a lot of these Maloir racing cars you see here, all 3 of these drivers, as a matter of fact, on your screens, are part of the same team. But without a team's championship to play for, the gloves are off here. They get to play as individuals. The only basis is that they're wearing the colours of the team. This is effectively a friendly match here, sort of a, what I'd say is the closest equivalent in esports terminology for a racing team here to a scrim. You're in a championship race, fighting as individuals alongside your teammates, of which you share cars with on the sort of grand stage, as it were. See here, Forrest is getting closer and closer and closer. It is really a case of when, not if, these 2 will get side by side on the way through Riches. We could be seeing that much sooner than expected. Up in front, we can see it's still ongoing as that fight for 3rd. Di Tosto quickly under siege now, as it seems, there from Tanguay. Staying on board with the ensemble here in that top 5. Now back on board proper with Byron Forrest. A driver we followed quite a bit over the course of the first half of today's round. And for every reason, it looks to be a very vivid performance here from the Aston Martin. Now, that's not to take away from what's going on up over the front row, or in fact in front or behind this current fight for what is now 5th place. It's just been a case here. The Aston Martin has found itself in the right place at the right time in plenty enough fights to find itself as the centre of attention, or one of the centres of attention of this grid. And as the man caught in the middle, we often stay on board with that middle ground car because we get the best view of everything if it's a 3-car fight like the one we see here on the exit of Williams. Up in front, Kevin Quain in the 607. The 824 we're following with at the moment, Byron Forrest, and then behind them, the number 120 of Vincent Simard in 7th place. Now, meanwhile, just to get a look up in front of things here, or I suppose out back, as we do see here continued fighting. This is Christophe Dupois versus Didier Potvin, but we're trying to find here with the scope of the furthest up the grid of any fights. This is the fight for the last of the podium positions. Now, this could secure another Chevrolet 1, 2, 3 if Tanguay is able to find his way to 3rd place. As of right now, McLaren gunning for their best result of the season out of the 58 of Timo Tosto. His best result so far in Season 2, 4th place, back-to-back at the Circuit of the Americas last week. So high stakes here between these two. For Tanguay, he needs to be as close as possible here to minimize the damage over his points tally with LeBay to keep things on the table by the time we get to Indianapolis. Otherwise, it will be a curtain call on the championship right here in Snetterton by the end of today. Behind them, quickly checking back in then with Forest v Quain v Simard. Two sister cars there for 5th and 6th place. That third row, all AMG engines. The M178 under the bonnet of the AMG GT, the M177 under the bonnet of the V8 Vantage. Both the 4-litre twin-turbo engine, engineered by Mercedes-AMG. The only difference being the one under the bonnet of the Aston Martin was licensed for export. And actually is the one that ended up outliving the M178 in some degree, as Mercedes was forced to downscale use of the M178 engine in a lot of their AMG models outside of the AMG GT itself. It meant that for a time they were producing more engines for export than they were for their own products. A very bizarre tale. Now that has since changed. The age of the 4-cylinder C-Class AMG, I believe, is now behind us, fortunately. And thank goodness for it. One of the biggest downgrades in engine history. You see here, you gotta hand it to Forest. I mean, this is laser precise from him. He has been driving like a bat out of hell even. Oh, little phlegm caught in my throat there. Choked up at the sight of the Aston Martin, absolutely clobbering the field today. This has been a phenomenal drive over the course of this race. And he still stands upon the chance, entering that final lap with a great run on the Exeter Murrays here to continue to challenge for a top 5. It's not over until he says it's over, and the 824 gets one more lap here in Snetterton. We'll be catching on board with the leading pair not long from now, as we see already the commitments to look up the inside, but it was only a fluke there for the 824, but it seems to have been enough, as it was enough to put a blindsider up over the 607. Now it forces it into the lens of a fight between Simard and Forest down towards Montreal. This has quickly exploded then. A little bit of mind games played between the 607 and the 824. The 607 ran itself out of ground on a fake out move there through Riches. That puts Forest in a 5th place, but now it's flipped on its head from an offense to defense fight. The 824 now has to hold on to 5th place here. He's got the ground he was searching for. Now is his opportunity to keep it. Up in front of him, DeTosto and Tanguay still clash heads for the last of the podium. Well, we'll catch on board with these guys in just a moment's time. We want to get a look around the field just before the checkered flag here. But for DeTosto and Tanguay, getting a look on the exit of Williams here, just up the road from the fight of 5th place. We see McLaren still holding ground. Going to catch on board, as we see here for the last time before we get down towards the checkered flag. That current fight looking to locate the leading pair. The 119 on his way down towards Coram. On board then with LeBay, hunting down yet another race win, continuing to open the taps up over what could very well be his last strides before another championship under his belt. We'll wait to see later on today, but as the checkered flag flies here in race 1 of 2, it's LeBay for yet another win in the 119. Now, getting hasty here over towards the rest of the field. Badiali for 2nd, but let's see how does the penny drop on the fight for the podium and moreover for the back of the top 5. DeTosto away from Tanguay, looks to take this one to the line. McLaren, Revel in their best result this season, 3rd place for the 58 across the line. David Tanguay, 4th place, fights things back from 7th. Byron Forrest finishes in 5th for Aston Martin. An exhilarating drive there from the 824. Absolutely laser precise there in race 1 of 2. Simard, a reluctant P6, but fought valiantly every step of the way. Kevin Quain beside himself at 7th place. Dylan Vekere in 8th. Richard Cecil 9th. Clinton Bourne in 10th. Graham Green coming to the line from 11th, having held off Sanchez and Peppers for the greater majority of this race. Makes 11th place ahead of Sanchez 12th, Peppers in 13th. Wishful Winnings has had a bizarre one here. On his way down the centre straight, though, he's been up on 2 wheels. He's been up on his door, but now he's up onto the checkered flag, 14th on his first race here in the GT4 Pro-Am Cup. The Jackal down towards the line. It's been a series of ups and downs here for the gold-clad 999. And same story there for the car behind him. 15th place then for the Jackal, making his way to the line. Here's Cal Ford in the 484. An emotional roller coaster towards the back of the field here. We see Brandon Card 17th. Christophe Dupois making his way to the line. Currently 18th, Didier Potvin up and ahead of him. So that will be 18th for the Aston Martin, as we've just seen there. 18th for Potvin, Dupois 19th, Black in 20th. Casey Miles 21st on the field, so it appears there. And for Sean Cox, he will see the checkered flag. Not particularly pleased from where he sees the checkered flag, though. 23rd for the number 74. Well then, at the bottom line of it, Christian Lebay, yet another win then for the 119. Taking a look into how many that's been over the course of this season. Well, so far, taking a look into that, that's currently the scope of his 8th race win. And finished 11.2 seconds, might I add, up and ahead of Giovanni Battiali. The chances then for Battiali to strike back at a potential 3rd race win this season are definitely slim here. Well then, reeling away from what was a fantastic opening race of 2 today, back into the session regulations before we get into qualifying 2. Another 10 minutes to follow then, much like what we saw just about 40 minutes ago. And then on to another race, 30 minutes here in round 7. Then after that, we're back on to the 60-minute format, with Indianapolis coming up on February 24th. That's at Eastern Standard Time for us here in the UK, where we film for these races. Any of our audience would be curious to know that'll be on the 25th at 1 AM Greenwich Mean Time, as it's been for the entirety of this season. Now, also some fantastic announcements as well. Sign-ups already underway for Season 3 of the GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series, set to pick up, if I'm not mistaken here, exactly a week after this series ends. That's on March 4th for the first race. That's technically March 3rd. And that'll be coming to you live from Brands Hatch, yet another MSV circuit and a proper jewel of the British motorsports ethos. That's going to be a brilliant opening round to be had there. Then the next round coming up will be Imola, Monza, and then taking a look through the rest of the calendar here. Silverstone, Laguna Seca, Donington, Paul Ricard, Zandvoort, and Bathurst. Now, the introduction of some brand new event types as well for Season 3, worth discussing here as we get in towards the scope of another qualifying session.
Green line. Give it all you got.
10 minutes then of qualifying. We see scrambling to the end of the pit lane. I believe they're just beaten to the punch. Both the Chevrolets of Lebay and Bourne, I believe they're just beaten out by Timo Di Tosto. We'll stay on board then with the McLaren as we continue our discussions then of things set to follow in the upcoming Season 3. So, new event types are arriving. We'll speak more of this as well in Indianapolis, but 60-minute races and double sprint races, like we've seen before, will retain their place on the calendar with the introduction of a very similar event type to what we've seen executed over on the Sunday League, the 90-minute Enduro race. Now, of course, not an original concept. We've seen plenty of leagues adapt to this idea, but now it makes its way onto the itinerary for the GT4 Pro-Am Cup, adding that extra layer of endurance and strategy in towards the championship. The first of those endurance races will be coming up at round 3 at the Autodromo Nazionale di Monza. We also see the introduction of the night race, and that'll be the 90-minute night race, the season finale on April 29th at 1 AM Greenwich Mean Time. That'll be around, if I'm not mistaken, 9 PM Eastern Standard Time. I'm not 100% with the metrics there, but that'll be technically April 28th for the competitors on the track, for the greater majority, I should say, of the competitors on track competing from the Eastern Standard Time Zone. And that'll be a Bathurst season finale and a dedicated nighttime race. That is going to be a curious one indeed. Evidently, race control very hyped up off of the recent Bathurst 12-hour and how chaotic that was. It was a fantastic race to go back and watch. If you haven't already, do thoroughly recommend, I should say, looking back through that race. You can go find some of the replays for the Bathurst 12-hour, the real life, I should say, Bathurst 12-hour over on YouTube. So then, away from discussions of Season 3, here into the last of 2 qualifying sessions today here for round 7 of Season 2. On board then with Timo de Tosto as we begin once again the scope of qualifying today. Onto the flying laps then. Bringing up the telemetry to our top left-hand side for the number 58 McLaren, set to be the baseline for Quali 2 today. Of course, it's worth bringing back up the qualifying predictions as brought in over the course of that first qualifying session. Now, I would say the law still applies here. We're definitely likely to see some of these drivers in that top 10 once again. We saw it was a bit of a hasty qualifying session for wishful winnings. Definitely the likelihood that he could put that 233 on to 10th place by the end of qualifying 2 today, now that he's got a bit more of a running start than he had in qualifying 1. Nonetheless, of course, same story as before. Lebay over the front row. Bourne definitely still within a chance to find himself back up at the front row, as he was laying in some very competitive times over the course of Quali 1. Ultimately, it was Battiali over the front row in Quali 1 today. Now, poignantly here for De Tosto on your screens, he was predicted at 3rd place. We saw him finish 3rd place in the race just gone now. I would say it's definitely the chances here of him being able to go back-to-back on promises like these. Of course, back-to-back 4th place finishes in the Circuit of the Americas. One up to that with the result we just saw now for his best so far this season, and McLaren's best as a manufacturer with 3rd place in race 1 of 2 today. Just like qualifying 1, doesn't matter how quick out of the gates you are, so much of that time bleeds away over the outlap. To the point here where coming into about 6 minutes left to go is when we see the first of our times roll in. So really, in terms of the active phase, the sort of hot stint phase as we get of this qualifying, only really lasts us about 60% of the overall session. The opening 40 minutes is just us talking here, watching the drivers lay in the first of those flying laps. Well, down to the line then, we see here for Timo de Tosto, looking very strong indeed. The 58 to the line, then from behind him, Clinton Vaughan. Now up to the new fastest time, 1:56.307. Then from behind them, the 1:19 of Lebay. Then approaching the line appears to be the 6:07. That's Kevin Quain, 4th fastest in the session. From behind them, approaching the line, the number 5, Richard Cecil with Aston Martin. Hits the line there for 5th. That's pushed down to 6th by Giovanni Battiali. Now 2nd from behind them, Graham Green in 5th. Number 30 to the line, David Tanguay. Sadly, no time in once again. The 6:16 coming to the line, Andrew Veldkamp. And from behind them, the 74, the 824, the 24, the 35, the 233, the 91, the 39, the 161, the 120, and the 96, and the 484. So then 824 to the line, Byron Forrest. 5th fastest there. Then the 24, Chili Peppers to the line. 9th fastest from behind them. We also see to the line of what appears to be Didier Potvin. 9th fastest now. We see there's wishful winnings in the background. But between them all, the 91, Ivan Sanchez, 9th. Number 39, Christophe Dupois, 12th place as he hits the line there. And the number 161, Dylan Vekere coming to the line for Aston Martin. And we'll wait to see if that time appears on the charts. It could very well have been the case that that was invalidated there for Vekere in that last lap. Just gone the 120 across the line a moment ago. And that was for that of Vincent Simard. Same story there and applies for the Chevrolet. 96 across the line a moment ago. Casey Miles, 14th. 484 coming to the line. Cal Ford. Sadly, nothing on the charts there this time around, but he's still got time in this session, 4 minutes to be precise, as he makes his way around turn 1. Trouble for the 888 there. Brandon Carr and the exit of Murray's ran into a spot of bother. We can see approaching the line then the same leading pair from last time, the 58 and the 6, currently comprised of that 2nd row. Back to the line then, the 58 up to 3rd. What's the rebuttal by Bourne? Takes it right back off of him. From behind him, the 119, 155, 297, the new fastest time, up by a few hundredths there. In the background, we see the 607 up to 5th, now ahead of Byron Forrest. 111 coming to the line. 62 thousandths. Sadly, nothing on that last lap there. The number 5, Richard Cecil, 8th place. Then behind him, technically ahead of him on the charts, but behind him on the road, Graham Green maintains 7th. Number 30 to the line. David Tanguay now pushes both of them down a peg as he makes 3rd. Number 616 to the line, Veldkamp. From 14th as he crosses the line there. Could it have been 13th? Sadly, not this time around. Needs about 0.3 of a second for that. The 824 to the line. Very close to a chance of a top 5. 6th at the first hurdle there. From behind him, the 24, Chili Peppers, up from 13th to 9th. Didier Potvin from the number 35, I should say, not from 35th. The number 35 in 12th stays 12th. As for the 91, Ivan Sanchez, still within the top 10 there. Impressive stuff so far for McLaren. 161 though to the line. Vecchiere 10th. Sean Cox alongside him. Also on the timing charts now, just went the number 120. Vincent Simard, third fastest. If you were dreading the arrival of that Chevrolet 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you may want to look away. Because now you do see the basis of it. The 119, the 111, the 120, the 30, and the 6. The fearsome 5 of Chevrolet's indiscriminate wrath, so it seems. The Chevrolet Armada then seemingly striking once more. Brandon Carr to the line. Ahead of De Tosto on the field at the moment. On the charts there, 17th as he hits the line, the 58. Can he break a line in on the Chevrolets? Not this time around. What can Bourne do? Bear in mind, looking at it there, the scope of about 35 thousandths away from a second row start, courtesy of David Tanguay. 111 coming to the line. Bear in mind, still needs 62 thousandths for that fastest time. As he crosses the line there, Giovanni Battiali still cannot find the helm for pole position. Number 30 coming to the line. David Tanguay couldn't find grounds to go up and ahead there to third place. The 747 across the line. Graham Green still in the top 10 there, straggling in 9th. Distanced away then from the rest of the Chevrolets in the top 5. He's 9th on the field. We see here Byron Forrest from 7th across the line. Sadly couldn't find grounds for 6th there. Very close gap to be had. 77 thousandths, I should say, of a second. Meanwhile, for Chili Peppers now up to 11th. Pushes Sanchez down to 12th. 35 across the line. Didier Potvin stays 15th on that last lap. Number 233 across the line. Wishful Winnings, 14th. Number 161 a moment ago, then Dylan Vecchiere. Following on the trails of the 74, Sean Cox mysteriously still yet to have found time, and I don't think he'll be looking for any in this qualifying session as he plummets to the wall. The pangs of frustration settling on the 74 after a qualifying session to forget 20 seconds, so it appears then, for BMW. Catching in next with the nearest cars. Brandon Carr and Timo De Tosto out through Murray's. Carr from 18th goes 17th. De Tosto from 6th. Believe there just beats the bell, so has one more shot here in qualifying. Out through Rich as he goes. He won't waste the opportunity now to breach back into that top 5 and cause some serious trouble for Chevrolet. 707 coming to the line. Stephen Black putting a time on the charts, then 21st. Byron Forrest, as we mentioned before, 77 thousandths away from De Tosto at the front of that third row. In terms of his distance then to Bourne at the back of that top 5. The gap residing just shy of 2 tenths, 190 thousandths to be exact. Cross the line from 7th and stay 7th for the end of that session. We see Chili Peppers there, who's been trailing him all session long on track, makes the line there for 11th at the end of Quali 2. Number 35, Didier Potvin, coming to the line from 16th at the end of qualifying 2. Where does he place himself? He stays in 16th. So the only driver then left out hot lapping the track as it stands right now, the 58 of Timo De Tosto as he makes his way down the Bentley straight. It's all or nothing here in the prospect of a top 5 start for McLaren once again. Of course, reveling from his best result of the season thus far. 3rd place in that last race, just gone in a valiant defense of the podium. Sadly, couldn't find any ground of it towards the end of qualifying. We saw him veer off on purpose there, out through Brundle and Nelson, signifying the end of qualifying 2. And so we'll just return to you in a moment's time. We'll wait for that grid to form up. Do just give us one moment. So we return just after a short break there. Now on to the scope of Grid 2 today, the final race of 2 here in round 7 of the championship. And looking back over the front row, we find ourselves with the all too same prospect of Labay against Badiali over the front row of the grid. But joining them now 3 more Chevrolets than last time, with Simard, Tanguay and Bourne from 3rd, 4th and 5th. Looking at the rest of the field then, from 6th down towards 10th, DeTosto, Forrest, Quain, Green and Cecil. Then from 11th down to 20th, Peppers, Sanchez, Vekere, Winnings, Ford, Potvin, Carr, Dupois, Veldkamp and Mals. Then 21st, 22nd and 23rd for Stephen Black, the Jackal and Sean Cox. So a broadly different scope of things in the end of that last qualifying session compared to what we saw in Quali 1. The Chevrolets definitely having recuperated on a lot of their losses suffered through that first race. A lot more scattered performances for Chevrolet. This is a much more unified performance we've seen here. Another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now the question therein remains, can it be in results another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Several of which we've seen this season. I believe the count now up at about 3, maybe 4 there in the current scope of things in Season 2. That 6th Gen Camaro has dominated the field by and large, more than any other machine in any category I have ever seen. That does take quite a lot of referencing in mind to consider what we've seen here on TRTN. I mean, as far back as we've been doing commentary work, we started off with F1 and then moved over to GT racing. GT3, we saw the rise and fall of the BMW M4. You can still say that it is quite a relevant car in this day. We saw the rise of the 720S Evo, the 296, the Mustang.
30 seconds.
No one vehicle in any category have I seen shock the system like Chevrolet is doing in the modern day. On this grid, in series like these, and this is not just a Competizione Performance League issue. This is found all the way over on HCCL as well. Another GT4 championship we covered there. The GT4 Challenge was dominated by the 119 Chevrolet, the one you're seeing there on the front of that grid. Christian Labay, who went on to be the champion not only in Season 2's GT4 multi-class, but also in the scope of the first ever running of the GT4 Challenge itself, making Labay a 2-time HCCL GT4 champion. Precariously enough, the one series we've yet to see dominated now by the GT4 Camaro has been the case of the most recent season of the multi-class championship, and that's simply safe for the case of the fact that Labay doesn't compete in it. So really the only thing that was stopping Chevrolet from dominating yet another series in their conquest was whether or not they were available to compete. So you could make the argument for the balance of GT4, at least in that series, they've dodged quite the asteroid that is the Camaro. But things not been so lucky on this grid. This has been, by and large, the most dominance we've ever seen of a manufacturer ever in the history of broadcasting here on TRTN. Many manufacturers have garnered fear for that very special accolade of being able to dominate a field. It's having to require some of the most radical changes to balance of performance. Chevrolet snuck under the radar and tapped into that niche. So much so they find themselves today staring down the barrel of 40 kilos worth of a reduction. Somehow, you would never see that on the Ford. You would never see that on the BMW. You would never see that on the Ferrari. But down in GT4, the rules just aren't the same. And this is a vehicle that requires, yes, a bit of fettling, but once finally adapted, is an absolute juggernaut. I cannot go at length enough over the course of this championship, like the many times we have done before, to properly explain what kind of an effect this vehicle has had on this grid. So much so that you really had to be there to see it. From the end of Season 1 into Season 2, saw an explosive rise in attendees choosing the Camaro outright. Now, the only other manufacturer to be able to do that in the time since, well, there's actually 2 that spring to mind. First of all, Aston Martin, and then their sister group, Mercedes-AMG. They share the same beating heart here, the AMG engine. finds itself across both platforms, the Vantage and the AMG GT. We see here, staring down the lines, is that fourth row, Byron Forrest and Kevin Quain. Mercedes saw a record number of sign-ups in Season 2, so too did Aston Martin. They find themselves among the most popular manufacturers on this grid. You have sprinklings here from McLaren, and then a very, very rare sight from BMW. You see there for Sean Cox, but we go to catch back on board then with the leading pair, back on board with the front of the field with the 119. Time for dramatics then is far past us on the run in towards turn 12 here at Murray's. Again, eager for the start, the 111, looking to right the wrongs of that first race start. Ultimately was the curtain call once he tucked in behind the 119. He won't get fooled again on his run back to the line here. The last of two races today then in Season 2, Round 7 here from Snetterton for the Competizione Performance League GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series. Our last stop in Great Britain before the end of Season 2. One more round to follow after today. The last of two races. We are green and racing here in Snetterton. A great start from the front row once again to be expected. And following on the stead there, more V8 Thunder out past the second row. A side-by-side action there between David Tanguay and Vincent Simard carries us down through Rich's corner. They filter out into single file. We see a bit of a rocky run there for the 111 on the run in towards Montreal. Tucks back into single file. Holds off in advance with the 30, but it's contact from behind between Tanguay and Badiali, and it creates a domino effect that allows there slipping through for Clinton Bourne, but then nicked across the back end by the number 30. Now slipping on past goes Vincent Simard, as the number 6 takes a quick dive there onto the grass. A very bizarre start indeed, but leveraging the most of it has been the 120. We saw there the most recent collisions that created that incident there. The number 6, once it had more than one wheel in the grass, it was a passenger from there on out. That's a sad sight there to see what's happened for Clinton Bourne. And it's not looking particularly grand here for the 30. Now, of course, we'll wait for the race control investigation. He did hold the furthest right-hand side of the road. If he still got clips there, there definitely could be the suggestion that the number 6 drifted across his nose, but we'll wait to see what says of that. Meanwhile then, the 120 takes up the helm of second place. Badiali drops to third, Tanguay to fourth, but Byron Forrest immediately on the charge inside of the top 5. Taking a look then at the front of the field, already 3 seconds opened up in the madness that ensued out through the opening sector there between LeBay and Simard. Badiali in third, Tanguay in fourth. A civil war then amongst the Chevrolets on what looked to have been a unified and coordinated start by the Chevys. Quickly descended into madness on the run out of Montreal. Byron Forrest then tucks in behind from 5th place. Kevin Quain right on his trails. Dylan Vekere in 7th. Then behind them is Richard Cecil. Mercedes and Aston Martin on the charge then towards Chevrolet. It is warfare here between the European brands and the American juggernauts. Behind them, we see McLaren's Timo de Tosto, 3rd place in the last race here, starts things off in 9th. Behind them, Gray and Green and Wishful Winnings. It's worth noting as well that incident earlier on in race 1 for Winnings, where he was up over his door. A very bizarre incident indeed on the run out through Brundle and Nelson, if I'm not mistaken there. Now he finds himself clashing heads here with Graham Green, his fellow Chevrolet, the number 747 up in front of him. This is for control of the last of the top 10 positions. So this represents a very pivotal standing point here for Winnings in what is effectively his opening round of competition. He's already seen 1 race under his belt today. We see up in front, looks to be De Tosto versus Cecil. Now this is in the stead of 8th place here for Timo De Tosto, still trying to fight his way up and ahead of 9th. Big trouble then for the little McLaren. Up in front, Kevin Quain starting to put the pressure now onto Byron Forrest. We saw there just scraping some of the grass. That was the number 5, Richard Cecil, on the exit of Williams now, trying to break the toe off of Timo de Tosto's number 58. Bear in mind, clinging to his coattails as well will be the 2 Chevrolets riding up from the back of the top 10 here, just from the 5th into the 6th row for Green and Winnings. Out behind them, you see there immediate trouble. Who was that that went careening off the track? Was that? Yes, it was Sanchez. A vaguely white and green blur, the 91, became a bullet there, overrunning the braking zone down in towards, by looks of it there, that was out through Brundle And then we see out back, Bourne v Cox here. This is for 21st. Could very well be for 22nd. No, it is for 21st on the field here. Cox out in front. And it has been a very troublesome race start here for Clinton Bourne. He will be seeing red throughout the entirety of the next 25 or so minutes. Meanwhile, we see here for Badiali v Simard in that scope of second place. War amongst the Chevys. 120 versus 111 versus 30. These three squeezing each other here for control of second and third. The last of those podium positions. Now, bear in mind, if we see anything even in the close range of what we saw in the race start there amongst the Chevrolet pack in the top 5, this could be absolute payday here for Byron Forrest and Kevin Quain. Not to forget as well, Dylan Vekere behind them. Close at hand. All three of those drivers could see great benefit if these three come into heads about any more fights. As you've seen here, it is not uncommon for the Chevys to get very boisterous. Meanwhile, we just saw there, trouble for what I believe was the 96 and the 6. So Casey Malles and Clinton Bourne, both in the pit lane. There was an incident after turn 1. Meanwhile, we just catch here for the 58. He's turned around. That's Timo de Tosto. Yellow flags out on track here. Calamity before Oggies and Williams for the 58 as he's knocked down peg after peg after peg there. Drops in now just in front of the number 74 of Sean Cox, downgraded to 18th after that incident just out through Hamilton. Bear in mind for De Tosto, back into green flag conditions here with just under 25 minutes left to go, but he does find himself vulnerable for an around the outside slingshot here from the 74 of Sean Cox. Commits to it. He's up the inside at Nelson. De Tosto around the outside, gets more momentum there to keep himself up over the nose of the BMW of Sean Cox. So you see here, super close on the run in towards Coram. Very close action there, front from rear on the 58. And what has been a very bizarre turn of fate for Timo de Tosto. Now he sizes up his chances here over Christophe Dupois, the number 16 in his iron sights as we make our way down the center straight. You see shifting over to the left-hand side, not looking to fight this one too hard with the 58 at this time. Down through to Riches, slots back in behind the McLaren, but holds off the advance by the 74. Runs things out to the left-hand side, though, with the BMW tucking in on the inside, down through to Montreal. Gets the leg up over the 39, but he's squeezed all the way to the outside there on the way out through Montreal. Very vivid action here towards the back of the field, must note as well. Then taking a look here, Tanguay, so it appears, is being intercepted by Byron Forrest. This is on the run currently out through Oggies in towards Williams. You can see the gap there between the 30 and the 824. Up in front of them, the 120 still fights with the 111. It's worth noting just how on the wire there the number 824 was in that last race. He was absolutely plugged in throughout race 1. So I do fear here for David Tanguay. His hopes of the championship starting to thin by the second here. And with the 824 eager to take 4th place off of him, what are the hopes here on defense for the Chevrolet? Of course, preying upon Calamity up in front of him to give him 2nd place. You see here for Badiali, still ahead of Tanguay. Behind him, Byron Forrest and Kevin Quain closing in fast. Meanwhile, the gap having opened up some ways here for Dylan Vekere and Richard Cecil. These two closer to each other as it stands, as they're going to be to the rest of the field in the next couple of laps. Those two Aston Martins set to clash heads later down the line for what appears to be 7th. Meanwhile, Wishful Winnings now have emerged ahead of Graham Green. Now 9th place on the field. 2 temps between the pair. Chili Peppers in 11th, Brandon Carr. So you see here fighting with the Jackal. This is for 12th place here between the 888 and the 999. Down towards Agostini. The Mercedes just holding on here. The Chevy trying to pluck away at the racing line. We're going to look back through that grid in a moment's time. Just catching back on board here with the Jackal. This is in the fight for 12th place. Now firmly in the slipstream of it, we see here for the Jackal. This could be the solidifying move for that run up to 12th place. Brandon Carr right up in front of him as we make the run down the Bentley straight in towards Brundle and Nelson, but he backs out of it there, hesitating to make a move up the inside, perhaps weighing in just how risky a move that may be. We see here now for the 111, that continued prospect for a fight of second place. Both of them having a bit of a wiry run on the exit there of Murray's. But again, having that slipstream is paying heavy dividends here to Giovanni Badiali. Down through to turn 1 we go, holding that inside line then, the 120. Trying to make himself as wide as possible here. Make it as uncomfortable to pass. Ultimately would be far less valuable than the squeeze it's worth. Yeah, apologies there to HCR Anthony in chat. This is the double sprint event for Snetterton. So we're currently in the midst, just 10 minutes now into race number 2. A very hectic start amongst the Chevrolet. Started as a 1-2-3-4-5, has now descended to a 1-2-3-4 after a collision between the number 30 of David Tanguay and the number 6 of Clinton Bourne, down towards Palmer at turn 3 on the race start. I believe we may actually still have it on replay here, just bringing back up the replay from earlier on. That was the aftermath of that little hit there down through to Palmer. That was on the race start just a moment ago. Meanwhile, on board with Badiali and what remains now of that top 5. Hunting down then Vincent Simard. Meanwhile, there was a momentary yellow flag. The 484 Cal Ford, if I'm not mistaken, there was in a spot bother out through Agostini. Now passed up by the 616 of Andrew Veldkamp as we get down through Hamilton. And the moment then we're on board on the main display, Badiali versus the 120 of Simard. They make contact and that opens the doors up for David Tanguay. All is not yet lost for the number 30. We were running the numbers in the background. The number 30 ended up finishing this race 4th, if I'm not mistaken, in that last race just gone. Went up 3 positions from 7th to 4th at the end of race 1. Now, that is really just us gauging from memory. Do feel free to correct us in chat if you think we're wrong on that assertion, but pretty certain it was 4th place. Very difficult to remember anything this early in the morning. Do forgive me if that is not the case, but crunching the numbers on that, the difference between the 35 points haul for oh, hang on just a moment, give me a second. That's the new scoring system. We don't talk about that just yet, but taking a look there at the scoring system, difference between 1st and 4th. Okay, no, the points still apply there. It is still a 9-point gap. So bear in mind what LeBay has to build up over what the gap started out in today was up by a 32-point gap. He needs to build 14 points. Presently, finished that last race, if I'm not mistaken, also with the fastest lap. So that's currently 10 points. So for LeBay, as it stands, he needs to only put 4 points up over Tanguay. As it stands right now, in 17 minutes' time, if they finish the way that they are, this is just off of our calculations, Christian LeBay will no longer be able to be caught numerically and will be champion in season 2. Meanwhile, we just saw up in the background there, Simard up over 2 wheels again. Someone is going to do what I expect is going to happen here. If we saw back in race 1 for Wishful Winnings when he was up over his side, someone in this top 4 is going to end up in that same pitfall if it isn't Wishful Winnings again. I'm sure he's not going to look to make the same mistake twice, but we've seen there, especially for Simard, how enthusiastic he's been to get up over those curbs at a moment's notice. So I do see that to be a possibility over the course of this race. So looking around the field, as we are not long actually from the conversation of the halfway mark of this race, on board with Byron Forrest, who is chasing down his chances to be within that top 4. But now we see things have gotten a lot more local in the fight between Tanguay and Badiali. He knows here that it's all down to the wire. He needs to do absolutely everything in his power to withhold the chances here of missing out on taking this championship all the way to Indianapolis. Now, we're still running the numbers in the background, but as it stands right now, if they finish in the order that they're currently in the next 15 minutes, I believe it may very well be the case here that LeBay outscores by 5 points ahead of the point of no return. Ergo, then becoming champion. We'll wait to see on that one. We'll need to verify all results first, and I think that is very close then to the advent of back-to-back GT4 Pro-Am Cup Championships for the 119. And really, who comes as any surprise to this? Seeing the results that he's had over the course of the season, of course, picking up his 8th race win in the last race just gone. Tanguay, though, he has put up a formidable fight. There is a silver lining to the dark cloud that lays ahead of him here in Snetterton. He has put up a formidable fight. Very few can bring it down to the penultimate round of the championship against what has been a absolute knockout run of things for the defending champion. More on that conversation, though, towards the end of the race, when we know what the results are looking like. Meanwhile, Cal Ford into the pit lane in the 484. That makes now one of 2 Chevrolets in the pits at this time. So, looking into the session so far, LeBay leads ahead of Simard, Badiali 3rd, Tanguay 4th, Forrest 5th, Quain 6th, Vekere 7th, Cecil 8th, Winnings 9th, and Green in 10th. Peppers in 11th, Jackal in 12th, DeTosto 13th, Carr 14th, Potvin 15th, Sanchez in 16th, Black 17th, Dupois 18th, Velcam 19th, Ford 20th, and Bourne in 21st, though by looks of it, potential soft DNFs for 20th and 21st, given the length of time they've spent so far in the pit lane. In terms of nearby fights, you're seeing one of them play out in front of our very eyes here. The ongoing fight for 4th place. Last interval gave us about 6 attempts to play with there. It's also worth noting a future fight coming up here. 12th place up for grabs. The Jackal defending from an approaching 58. McLaren of Timo DeTosto. Of course, we saw their incident, or the aftermath of said incident down here at Oggies and Williams. Evidently an issue that arose out through Hamilton, the corner before. Also have that ongoing fight as it stands here for Badiali against Simard. Latest interval shows just shy of 9/10 of a second, so much further away than what we saw in some of the previous fighting for Forrest v Tanguay. But as we do report on that now, it has now grown out to past a second, so it now makes itself as one of the closer fights in recent updates. Even in that, though, it now brings into question a new fight, Quain v Forrest. This is for 5th place here between the Mercedes and the Aston Martin, of course, the sister cars, as it were, for the engine under the bonnet. 4-litre twin-turbo V8 engine. A marvel of European engineering. The M1 is 7.8. In the background, it is worth pointing this one out here. We do see, I believe this... Oh, no, this is just to be the case here. The 484 is actually back out on track. I did thought I saw the bright green there of Cal Ford. He is back out on track, 20th on the race at the moment, but adamant to see the checkered flag here in Snetterton. New fight, now properly emerging. We did say it's a future fight, but definitely new fight now is DeTosto versus Jackal. Quickly chiming in here for Quain v Forrest, as we see at the moment. That hovers around a second, so nowhere near as likely to get active at this time as the fight for the 58 versus the 999. We see here on board with Timo de Tosto, pursuing 12th place on his run through Hamilton. An exciting announcement coming through there from our Twitch chat is the return of Anthony Valorio to the grid for Season 3 of the GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series. And also back on just quickly that discussion as well we had earlier on about some of the new implementations for Season 3, of course set to pick up very, very quickly from where Season 2 left off, but also coming in with that is now proper categorization of the Pro and Am category, meaning 2 distinct championships to be fought for over the course of the season. Also, by looks of it, this is just based off of data we have to hand here on SimGrid, looks to potentially be the introduction of a proper team championship structure. So this could be among the last rounds we see of cars such as the Malwar Racing team go head-to-head with the gloves off. It could be a lot more of a tactical show of things over the course of Season 3, a lot more working together to be had to secure the team's championship. Now, of course, we've seen Malwar Racing to do that on the international stage, took Season 3's team's championships over on the NLRL Sunday League in the first ever running of the team's championships. That was later gone on to have been won by a Velocity Racing team in Season 4 thereafter. Now currently led after the second round, having concluded in Laguna Seca last Sunday, currently being led by Euro Titans Endurance in Season 5 on the 3rd season now of the team's championship being a feature. It's curious to see then what it's going to look like for Season 3 here on its first ever season in circulation, a GT4 Teams Championship in the Competizione Performance League. Presently, having a look at that entry list as we stay on board here with De Tosto, we can confirm he will be part of the Pro Ensemble for Season 3. Alongside him will also be Dylan Vecchia, Ivan Sanchez, Christian Lebay, Vincent Simard, Richard Cecil, Giovanni Battiali, Kevin Quain, Byron Forrest, Chili Peppers, George Todd, David Tanguay, Anthony Valorio, and Graham Green. That's the current scope of sign-ups in the Pro category. We'll speak more on the rest of the field when we have more information coming into the next round, the final round of the championship after today at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway at the season finale for Season 2. We still see here, though, that fight of 12th place and up on 2 wheels. Now, maybe not to the same absurd degree as we've seen today from drivers such as the 233 or the trying to remember actually, yeah, the 233. Yeah, I'm not going crazy. That was for wishful winnings. And this is the one stifling point for the 58. He knows he's got the run over the Chevrolets, but really it's quite situational for McLaren. And the center straight is about the best opportunity they get to demonstrate that. Going around the outside of Rich is holding the furthest toe of ground away from the 999. Holding it all the way to around the outside. He's left it open on the inside, though, for the Jackal to fight him back in towards Montreal. He's already aware of this. Gives him the space. Runs things long. Gives himself the inside down towards Palmer, but he needs to pray he's got the torque to carry down towards turn 3. That he does. Great side-by-side action here between De Tosto and Jackal. This is almost very, very well choreographed. I mean, it's a ballet of sorts between the McLaren and the Chevrolet at this time. Two broadly different machines practically mirrored to one another there. Now it comes to a close on the exit of Agostini. That was one of the most graceful fights I think I've ever seen. In towards Hamilton. I'll be sure to look that one back and play some classical music over it. I'm sure that'll be very, very funny to me. In towards Oggies. Then on the run in towards Williams at this time. We do see, though, the 999's picked up some of the steam there. In towards Williams, up on the inside. Forcing him to the long way around town here. The 58 with the 999 in its side draft. Needs to hope he's got more than enough here under that right foot to keep him ahead of the Jackal. It does appear to be the case here for De Tosto. So this has been a fantastic scrap for 12th place. Heading down into Brundle and Nelson. Could it be the nail in the coffin on that fight for 12th place? By the looks of it there, as he continues up and ahead in towards Coram, he's up to 12th. We'll catch on with these two in a moment's time, taking a look back around the grid to see some of the other fights we see currently in the scope down towards the Bentley straight here. This is Stephen Black versus Didier Potvin. This is for not 13th, sorry, 16th on the field. Aston Martin versus Mercedes. heading up through Brundle and Nelson. Just couldn't find any ground of it there. Having a look around the field, we see much in the same stead as what we see here for a fight between these two. The Aston and the Mercedes we see up here towards that top 5 as a continuing on in their conquest for 5th place. Kevin Quain against Byron Forrest. Still yet to have found any ground, though, over his adversary in the 824. Meanwhile, just to give a scope of things there, Badiali in second ahead of Simard, still very closely pursuing now that 2nd place spot. Tanguay not too far away at all, but it could very well be too little too late to stave off that championship hope for the 119 just around the corner on this race today. So taking a look as we approach the final 5 minutes, Christian LeBay leads out by a landslide here. Almost the entire scope of the Bentley straight away from Giovanni Badiali second, with the world's weight resting on his shoulders behind him, with Vincent Simard and David Tanguay both barreling down for 2nd place on the field. It looks to be back-to-back 2nd place finishes for Badiali today. Still a fantastic result to take away for the 111. Byron Forrest right behind, still being actively pursued every step of the way, then close by less than a second by Kevin Quain in the 607 Mercedes. Dylan Vekere tucks in for 7th ahead of Richard Cecil in 8th. Wishful Winnings in 9th, still being pursued by Graham Green in the 747. Those two sharing in some great fights today in the twin Chevys at the back of the top 10. Chili Peppers in 11th place ahead of Timo Tosto, who we saw recently up to 12th in that magnificent fight he had with the Jackal. Those two putting on a brilliant show there. Great consideration throughout a textbook fight. One definitely to be remembered there. Jackal 13th. Brandon Carr in 14th ahead of Ivan Sanchez. 15th. Didier Potvin in 16th. Stephen Black in 17th. Christophe Dupois in 18th. Andrew Velkamp 19th. And Cal Ford in 20th. Seeing here was some of the fights, of course, the closest to consider. You're seeing one of them here, Quain v Forrest. Also Badiali v Simard to consider at this time as well. And then further down the line, we've got here Winnings v Green, but we are starting to see that fizzle out just a little bit in the waning laps of race 2. You see here, super close to one another on the run through Oggies in towards Williams, the 607, still hunting down the 824. On board with Kevin Quain, he's got the run in towards the Bentley straight. This comes down to a matter of setup here. That's going to give just a few miles an hour difference between the Aston and the Mercedes. A lot of factors to be considered here when you factor in these two are running near enough the same engine. It's very clever what Mercedes were doing when they designed the AMG GT. Of course, they've been sticking very closely to this sort of slick back coupe shape as far back as the 300 SEL Gullwing in the 60s. And it's been a case where having the car with the cockpit so far back means you can shove the engine further back, meaning you get a front mid. And it's a case where that works very nicely for handling dynamics. It means that you haven't got all of the weight hogging just up in front of the axle or over the front axle, but in fact just behind the front axle, giving it some of the more maneuverable attributes of a mid-engine car without needing to re-engineer the whole platform. Now, of course, this works wonderfully when you consider neither of these two cars in real life are all-wheel drive. They are rear-wheel drive vehicles, meaning they don't have to consider things like having the engine close enough over the front axle to integrate a transaxle system for an all-wheel drive system. Those were some of the engineering pitfalls that ended up finding cars earlier down the line when first experimenting with technology like that to be a little bit on the front heavier side, a little bit of a boat to handle. That was one of the major pitfalls of the Audi Quattro. But of course, being the pioneer of its time, little that could have been done in that situation. For these cars, though, broadly different scope of things. They don't need all-wheel drive. In fact, they don't want it. SRO forbids the use of all-wheel drive on these GT cars entirely. Which is why when you see cars like the Audi R8 LMS, they've been detuned from having that Quattro all-wheel drive system. They've been put down on a two-wheel drive basis. Meanwhile, yellow flags for the 484 Cal Ford out through what appears to be there on the exit of Hamilton. So not the first person to be caught out in a situation like that. Of course, we saw for Timo de Tosto earlier on in the race. Much the same case emerged. 119 just down towards the line onto the last lap of the race. So we are not long here. Under our calculations, at least from seeing LeBay as a two-time GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series champion, under our calculations, it'll be slim at best here, and if there is an amendment to this, we will be quick to address that in Indianapolis. And that's why we will give it some due pause here on the end of this race before we jump to any conclusions, but we do want to make sure all of the maths sticks as it should, as we see here with the fight between Crane and Forrest now dissolves onto that last lap. We do see up in 18th place here, Christophe Dupois, a little bit of trouble out through Agostini. The 119 in pursuit from behind him. So getting on board with the 119, looking to locate here as we quickly glance in on a fight still raging on after all this time between Winnings and Green for 9th place. These two have been inseparable from the word go. A brilliant fight to be had between these two. Hats off to the commitment there. These two so closely matched for pace. They've been able to stick to each other rubber and glue throughout the entirety of race 2 today. So to get a look in with the 119 down towards the run of Brundle and Nelson, not too far at all from the checkered flag here. We'll wait to confirm absolutely everything. Much in the same vein as one of Sebastian Vettel's championships, we do have to give it a little bit of time to confirm all of the results here before he does become, once again, Weltmeister. Owing to the scene there. Down towards the line, though. LeBay at the end of race 2. This could very well be one of the most impactful moments of the season for him. Down towards the line. His 9th race win, then, here in Season 2. And we'll wait to see the rest of the results, then. At the current scope of things, Badiali 2nd. Getting the last of the results there. Simard 3rd. And rolling to the line there, pursued by Forrest. Tanguay 4th. By the looks of it there, he's done more than enough. Christian LeBay, a two-time champion here in the Competizione Performance League GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series. Defending champion, now multiple-time champion. His conquest of GT4 knows no end. Certainly not here. He has dominated throughout the season. His 9th race win came in today on what has been back-to-back dominance here in Snetterton. Well, we'll try to get a word out of him. Hopefully in a moment's time. We do wait to see the rest of the results roll on through in this race. The bottom line there, I believe under the calculations we've had, that was more than enough. We saw here for Timo de Tosto, he did carry things all the way down to the line, closely pursuing Chili Peppers. Had there been one more lap, there could have been a brilliant fight to be had between those two. Of course, we got to see that fight between himself and the Jackal, and hats off to the pair of them there with such a brilliant fight. That is a textbook clash we saw. We also saw a very close gap here in the results between Sanchez and Carr, 14 thousandths of a second. Potvin to the line, back from behind him there, 2.9 seconds to 17th. Christophe Dupois not far from the line. We'll wait to get the full results up in a moment's time, but I believe there, as the curtain drops, that is the second in a row championships in this series. Currently undefeated then, the 119 of LeBay. Now, we'll wait to verify all those results in due course, but I'm fairly certain after next round, please, not tonight. So we had an official statement there through from LeBay. Evidently wanted to celebrate by his lonesome for this one, but with every right to do so. 9 race wins. So we'll catch up with him in Indianapolis to talk more on that feeling of the second championship. But there you see the final results of race 2. LeBay wins once again here in Snetterton. Back-to-back wins for race win number 8 and 9 for the 119 here in Season 2. Badiali 2nd, with Simard 3rd, Tanguay 4th, Forrest 5th, Quain 6th, Vekere 7th, Cecil 8th, Winnings 9th, and Green in 10th. Peppers 11th, De Tosto 12th, Jackal 13th, Carr 14th, Sanchez 15th, Potvin 16th, Black 17th, Dupois 18th, Velkamp 19th, and Ford in 20th. Wow, what a dual set of races we've had here. That was some fantastic stuff here in Snetterton. A fantastic ensemble indeed. Great racing throughout, quite a lot of action to be had. It doesn't fail to disappoint, this circuit, Snetterton. It's a bit of a mixed bag for opinions amongst drivers and fans alike, but one thing is for certain, every visit we've had here to Snetterton has provided us with some of the best racing of the season, so I'm sure it earns that commendment from us. Looking on the calendar then, one more round left to go. We're away from the double sprint format for the last time here, so we wave goodbye to what has been a fantastic run of the double sprints this season. On to 60 minutes of racing at round 8 of the championship, when we head to the birthplace of American motor racing at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Round 8 of the championship then, February 24 for listeners and competitors on the Eastern Standard Time. For us here on the Greenwich Mean Time, that'll be February 25th at 1 a.m, same time as it's been today. What a time it has been in this championship. One more stop then, back across the pond over to America for one last round in Season 2. Till then, that's all from us here on TRTN. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. Take care. Good night.